There was once a person who felt lost. They woke up one morning and everything felt different. The job that once gave them purpose now felt meaningless. The friendships that once felt unshakable had become nothing more than empty conversations. The life they had carefully built no longer felt like it belonged to them. Something was changing, something big, but they couldn't explain it. They only knew one thing. They couldn't go back to who they were. Maybe this person is you. Maybe deep down you feel it too. The sense that you are standing on the edge of something unknown, that the universe is nudging you forward, whispering that your time has come. This is not a coincidence. This is a sign. Seneca once wrote in Letters to Lucilius, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. You are not at a dead end, you are at a threshold. If you feel restless, disconnected, or like you no longer fit into the life you once knew, it is not a sign of collapse. It is a sign of transformation. You are not being left behind, you are being called forward." The truth is, when your life is about to change, it doesn't announce itself with clarity. It comes disguised as confusion, as discomfort, as loss. But if you recognize the signs, you'll see that you are not breaking down, you are breaking through. In this video, I will reveal 8 powerful signs that your life is about to change for the better. If any of these resonate with you, don't ignore them. This is your moment. Will you step into it? 1. You feel lost and long to break free from what holds you back. There comes a point in life when the things that once felt certain suddenly become unrecognizable. The job you once worked so hard for now feels meaningless. The relationships you invested in seem hollow. The daily routines that used to bring you comfort now feel like a prison. You wake up every morning feeling disconnected from your own existence, trapped in a life that no longer belongs to you. You look around and realize you are stuck, not in a physical place, but in a version of yourself that no longer fits. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist in Vienna, lost everything to the Nazi regime: his home, his career, his family. Alone in a concentration camp, he faced suffering beyond imagination. As a Jewish psychiatrist, Frankl was imprisoned in 4 different concentration camps, where he endured starvation, disease, relentless forced labor, and the ever-present specter of death. He watched as men who had once been strong and hopeful collapsed under exhaustion, were executed without reason, or simply gave up on life. He woke up every morning unsure if he would see the next. His body withered away, reduced to skin and bone. His identity was erased. He was no longer Viktor Frankl, he was just a number. And yet, despite losing everything, Frankl refused to lose himself. He had no control over his circumstances, but he had control over his mind. While others around him surrendered to despair, Frankl made a radical decision. He would not allow suffering to define him. In the darkest place imaginable, he discovered a truth that would change not only his life, but the way millions would come to understand the human experience. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Frankl realized that even in the face of unbearable pain, humans still have one last freedom: the power to choose their response. Those who survived were not always the strongest, but those who found meaning in their suffering. Now look at your own life. You might not be in a concentration camp, but you might feel trapped in a reality that no longer feels like your own. Maybe you wake up each day with a sense of unease, knowing deep down that the life you're living is not the one meant for you. Maybe you have been clinging to old routines, old beliefs, or old relationships out of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of starting over, fear of losing what little stability you have left. But what if feeling lost is not a curse but a sign? What if it is a signal from your soul telling you that you have outgrown your current circumstances? The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, Book 8, Section 47, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Like Frankl, he understood that even when life is outside your control, your mindset remains yours to command. Most people ignore this call. They silence it with distractions, scrolling endlessly through social media, drowning themselves in mindless entertainment, keeping busy with routines that serve no real purpose, anything to avoid facing the truth. But the feeling doesn't go away. It grows louder. It demands to be acknowledged. This is why people stay in jobs they hate for decades, remain in relationships that no longer serve them, and hold on to outdated dreams that no longer align with who they are becoming. Right now, you have a choice. You can suppress this feeling, force yourself into a life that no longer fits, and hope that one day it miraculously makes sense again. Or you can take control. Imagine for a moment that your life is a book and you've just reached the end of a chapter. You can keep rereading the same pages, hoping they will somehow feel different, or you can turn the page and step into the unknown. Breaking free doesn't mean making reckless decisions overnight. It starts with a single step, a conscious decision to stop tolerating what no longer aligns with you. Ask yourself, what are 5 things in my life right now that no longer serve me? Maybe it's a job that drains your soul, a friendship that has become toxic, or habits that keep you stuck. Write them down, look at them, acknowledge them. Now commit to changing at least one of them today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. History is filled with people who once felt lost, but decided to take action instead of staying stuck. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, emerging not with bitterness, but with a vision that would unite a nation. Oprah Winfrey was told she wasn't fit for television before becoming one of the most powerful women in media. J.K. Rowling was a struggling single mother before writing the story that would define a generation. What separated them from the rest? They refused to let their circumstances dictate their future. This is your moment of truth. Look at your life. Be honest with yourself. Are you living a life you no longer feel connected to? If the answer is yes, then this is your wake-up call. Do not ignore it. Do not suppress it. Act on it. Because those who change the world are not the ones who had everything figured out from the start. They are the ones who dared to break free. So, what will you do next? 2. You are losing connections, but gaining your true path. There is a moment in every transformation when you realize that the people you once walked with are no longer walking beside you. The friends who once celebrated your dreams now question them. Conversations that used to energize you now feel forced, empty. The laughter, the camaraderie, the shared ambitions, all of it fades, replaced by silence. And then it happens. You are left standing alone. It is in this solitude that your greatest test begins. Nikola Tesla was once a rising star, but when he defied Edison and pursued alternating current, AC, he was ridiculed, abandoned, and dismissed. His vision, however, would later power the world. Edison, once his mentor, mocked him. Friends who had praised his genius now called him delusional. The scientific community dismissed him. He lost funding, partnerships, and credibility. His once promising future in the world of invention became a battleground of ridicule and rejection. But instead of compromising, Instead of bowing to the pressures of conformity, Tesla doubled down on his vision. He worked in solitude, driven by an unshakable belief that his ideas would one day power the world. And they did. Today, every home, every skyscraper, every city that shines in the night is proof of Tesla's defiance. The very technology that Edison and others ridiculed became the foundation of modern electricity. But Tesla paid a price. He died alone, penniless, forgotten by many in his time. Only after his death did the world begin to recognize the brilliance it once rejected. Now look at your own life. Have you ever felt this? The slow unraveling of relationships that once felt unbreakable. The moment when you realize you and the people you once held close are no longer aligned. Perhaps you've started thinking bigger, dreaming bolder, and suddenly those around you don't understand you anymore. Perhaps they laugh, they doubt, they whisper behind your back. Seneca, in Moral Letters to Lucilius, letter 11, wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." Not everyone is meant to walk the same path, and not everyone is destined to grow at the same pace. Some people will outgrow you, just as you will inevitably outgrow others. The mistake is believing that this is a tragedy, when in reality, it is a necessity. Growth demands change, and change often requires letting go of those who no longer align with the person you are becoming. The question is, are you holding on to certain relationships not because they serve you, but because you are afraid of being alone? The fear of loneliness is what keeps people stuck in places they no longer belong. They stay in friendships that drain them, in social circles that limit them, in conversations that no longer inspire them. They convince themselves that keeping people close, even those who no longer support their growth, is better than the discomfort of solitude. But Tesla, like every visionary before and after him, knew a truth most people refuse to accept. Loneliness is not the enemy of greatness. It is often the price of it. The tree does not mourn when its leaves fall in autumn. It does not cling to them, desperately trying to keep them from leaving. It understands that letting go is part of the cycle of growth. The same is true for you. The relationships that are meant to endure will endure, but those that are not will wither, drift away. Let them go. Most people assume that losing relationships means failure. But what if certain people are meant to be in your life only for a season? What if their role was to teach you something, to help you grow, and then leave so that you could become the person you were meant to be? Look back at the people you've lost, the ones who doubted you, the ones who betrayed you, the ones who drifted away when you needed them most. You may have once believed they were essential to your journey, but now, standing where you are, ask yourself honestly, are you better without them? This is your moment of truth. Take a deep breath and write down 3 names, 3 relationships that no longer uplift you, no longer push you toward the person you want to become. Now imagine what it would feel like to release them, not with anger, not with regret, but with gratitude. They played their part in your story, but your story isn't over, and not everyone can stay until the final chapter. Because when you let go of the wrong people, you make space for the right ones. When you stop clinging to relationships that no longer serve you, you open yourself to new connections that align with your future. Tesla didn't lose friends. He lost people who were never meant to walk the full journey with him. Neither did you. The next time you feel yourself losing connections, resist the urge to grieve too deeply. Instead, remind yourself, this is the price of growth. Not everyone can go where you are headed, but those who are meant to be there will be. The people who leave your life are often a reflection of the person you are leaving behind. But what happens when it's not just relationships that fall apart, but your dreams, your career, your ambitions? What happens when the path you worked so hard for suddenly collapses beneath you? This is where the real test begins. 3. You are facing a great failure, but beginning to see your mistakes. There comes a moment when everything you have built, your efforts, your sacrifices, your belief in yourself, crumbles right in front of you. The vision that once fueled you now feels like a distant illusion. The doors you knocked on refuse to open. Every ounce of effort you poured in seems wasted. You ask yourself, was it all for nothing? Failure doesn't just test your resilience, it exposes the rawest parts of you. It strips away illusions, forcing you to confront the brutal truth. Were you chasing something real, or were you clinging to an idea of yourself that no longer fits? Most people experience failure and assume they are not meant to succeed. They take it as a sign to quit. But the ones who rise from failure, the ones who redefine history, see failure not as an end, but as the beginning of something greater. Walt Disney failed repeatedly, fired at 22 for lacking imagination, lost his company to bankruptcy, and had his characters stolen. But he refused to quit. But instead of letting failure define him, he studied it. He examined his mistakes, adjusted his approach, and kept moving forward. Failure wasn't the end of his story, it was the beginning of an empire. The Stoics understood this long before Disney ever existed. Seneca, in On the Shortness of Life, wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is the foundation of it. Every setback forces you to examine yourself in ways that success never could. It reveals your weaknesses, tests your patience, and pushes you to evolve." But here's the part that most people miss. Failure is only valuable if you learn from it. Most people experience failure and walk away, never daring to try again. They assume success belongs only to the lucky or the talented. But if that were true, how do you explain those who have failed more than anyone else, but still became legends? The truth is, failure is not what stops most people. It is their refusal to learn from it. Most treat failure like an immovable wall. The successful treat it like a doorway. The moment you stop running from your failures and start studying them, you begin to unlock a different level of success. Failure is feedback. It tells you what works, what doesn't, and, most importantly, who you need to become in order to succeed. Ask yourself, what was your last failure? What lesson did it teach you? And are you actually applying that lesson? Or are you just using failure as an excuse to stop trying? Right now, you have a choice. You can let failure break you, or you can let it remake you. Write down 3 of your biggest failures. Then, under each one, write what that failure was trying to teach you. If you do this honestly, you will begin to see patterns. And once you see them, you can break them. Because failure is not a sign that you should stop. It is a sign that you are on the edge of something greater. This is your moment of truth. Will you let this failure define you, or will you use it to build the strongest version of yourself? 4. You stop caring about what others think. There comes a moment in life when you realize that the opinions of others have dictated far too many of your decisions. You have held yourself back, not because you lacked ability, but because you feared judgment. You shaped your choices, what to study, what career to pursue, what dreams to chase, based not on what set your soul on fire, but on what was deemed acceptable. But then one day it hits you. None of them are living your life, so why are they controlling it? This realization changes everything, because when you stop caring about what others think, you stop living for them and start living for yourself. Few people in history have embodied this truth more than Galileo Galilei. He was one of the greatest scientific minds the world has ever known, but his ideas were so radical that they nearly cost him everything. In the early 1600s, he proposed a theory that went against centuries of religious and scientific belief. The Earth was not the center of the universe. Instead, it revolved around the sun. To us today, this is common knowledge. But in Galileo's time, it was heresy. The Catholic Church, which held immense power, declared that anyone who challenged the Earth-centered model was defying God himself. When Galileo presented his findings, he was not met with curiosity or debate. He was met with outrage. Friends turned their backs on him. Fellow scientists mocked him. The Church accused him of corrupting minds. He was publicly humiliated, condemned as a dangerous thinker, and eventually put on trial for heresy. The message was clear: stay silent or suffer the consequences. And so, facing imprisonment or worse, Galileo stood before the Inquisition and was forced to renounce his life's work. He was made to swear that the Earth did not move, that his discoveries were false. If he did not, he would be executed. He spoke the words they wanted to hear. He bent, but he did not break. Because as he left the courtroom, legend has it that he whispered 4 words under his breath: "Eppur si muove." And yet, it moves. Even with the entire world against him, he never stopped believing in the truth. The world could silence him, but it could not control his mind. He lived the rest of his life under house arrest, but his discoveries changed history. Centuries later, the world would recognize that he was right all along. Most people are prisoners to the opinions of others. They let the fear of judgment keep them from expressing who they truly are. They stay in jobs they hate because quitting would make them look irresponsible. They suppress their real passions because pursuing them might make them seem foolish. They don't speak their mind because they worry about how others will react. And so they live their entire lives chasing approval rather than purpose. But here's a truth that will set you free. No one is thinking about you as much as you think they are. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, Book 12, Section 4, wrote, "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." This is the contradiction of human nature. We want to be free, but we imprison ourselves in the expectations of others. But judgment is an illusion. The people you fear will criticize you. They are too busy worrying about their own insecurities to truly care about yours. The ones who mock others. They do so to avoid confronting their own mediocrity. The ones who try to control you. They are the ones who have never dared to step outside their own comfort zones. Right now, you are holding yourself back because of people who will not matter in 5 years, let alone at the end of your life. The opinions of your classmates, your co-workers, distant relatives, social media strangers, these are the voices you are allowing to dictate your destiny. But let me ask you this. What if you stopped? What if you did the thing you've been afraid to do? What if you finally dressed, spoke, created, pursued, and lived exactly as you wanted without seeking permission? What if you finally stopped waiting for the world's approval and took back control of your own life? Imagine how different your life would be if you stopped seeking validation and started seeking fulfillment. Imagine the things you would create, the risks you would take, the version of yourself you would become if you no longer carried the weight of their expectations. This is your moment of truth. Are you living for yourself, or are you still letting others dictate your choices? Be brutally honest. If the answer is anything less than 100% for yourself, then today is the day that changes. Do something today that you have been afraid to do because of how others might perceive it. Speak up in that meeting. Post that project you've been hiding. Say no to what no longer serves you. Walk away from the things that shrink you. Take a step, any step, toward reclaiming your power. Because when you stop caring about what others think, you don't just become fearless, you become free. 5. You feel the urge to simplify your life. There comes a point when the chaos of modern life becomes overwhelming. You wake up and realize that your mind is cluttered, not just with physical possessions, but with obligations, distractions, and unnecessary burdens. The things you once thought would bring happiness, more money, more possessions, more recognition, now feel like chains keeping you from true freedom. You start craving something different, not more, but less. This shift in perspective is not a sign of boredom or stagnation. It is a sign of wisdom. Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful billionaires, understood this early on. Unlike other magnates who built extravagant mansions and indulged in luxury, Buffett still lives in the same modest house he purchased in 1958 for $31,500. Despite his wealth, he chooses simplicity, focusing on what truly matters. Why? Because he knows a truth that most people take a lifetime to understand. Freedom does not come from having more, it comes from needing less. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, captured this perfectly in Letters to Lucilius when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Most people spend their entire lives chasing more, a bigger house, a faster car, a higher salary. But what they don't realize is that with each new possession, they become more trapped. The bigger the house, the more maintenance. The more money, the more responsibilities. The more success, the greater the expectations. And then one day, the realization hits. The things you own end up owning you. That's when the desire to simplify begins. It starts subtly. You begin questioning whether you really need another pair of expensive shoes. You find yourself yearning for quiet instead of constant noise. You look around and notice how much of your energy is wasted on things that do not matter: clutter, obligations, social pressures, and mindless distractions. The desire for simplicity is not about giving up. It is about clearing space for what truly matters. But society does not encourage this. We are conditioned to believe that having more equals being more. Social media is flooded with images of people flaunting extravagant lifestyles. Advertisers tell you that happiness is one purchase away. The world keeps whispering that you need more to be enough. But let me ask you this. Are you truly free? Or are you just drowning in excess? Most people live in homes filled with things they rarely use, surrounded by obligations they secretly resent, stuck in routines that do not bring them joy. They convince themselves that complexity is necessary, that busyness equals success, that having more means winning. But the truth is, real success is owning your time, protecting your energy, and eliminating what does not serve you. Think about the most powerful moments of your life. Were they defined by material possessions or by experiences? Did happiness ever come from something you bought or from something you felt? Peace, love, clarity, purpose. The richest people in the world are not the ones with the most money. They are the ones with the most freedom. This is your moment of truth. Are you filling your life with things that bring true fulfillment, or are you just accumulating? Are you spending your time wisely, or are you trapped in a cycle of endless consumption? If you have started feeling the urge to simplify, do not ignore it. It is not a phase, it is growth. It means you are beginning to realize that life is not about adding more, it is about subtracting what does not matter. Start today. Spend 30 minutes decluttering one space in your home and remove at least 5 things that no longer bring value. Then, before you buy anything new, ask yourself, do I truly need this, or am I afraid to let go? Because true freedom does not come from having more, it comes from needing less. 6. You start focusing on the process instead of the outcome. There comes a moment when you realize that chasing results has left you feeling empty. You worked hard, you sacrificed, you put in the hours, but the moment you reached your goal, the happiness was fleeting. The victory lasted only a few moments before your mind started searching for the next big achievement. And that's when it hit you. What if success is not about the destination, but about how you move through the journey? This shift in perspective is one of the most powerful transformations a person can experience. Because when you stop obsessing over the outcome and start falling in love with the process, everything changes. Kobe Bryant understood this better than anyone. To the world, he was a basketball legend, a 5-time NBA champion, an icon. But if you asked him, he would tell you that titles and trophies were never his focus. In an interview, Kobe once said that the thing he missed the most after retirement was not the championships, not the fame, but the 4 a.m. training sessions, the relentless pursuit of improvement, the grind that no one else saw. To him, success was never about winning, it was about the art of mastery. He did not train to win championships, he trained to perfect his craft. And because he focused on the process, the results naturally followed. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. Epictetus, in Discourses, Book 2, Chapter 5, said, "Do what you must, let happen what may." This is the essence of discipline. You do not control the outcome, you only control the effort you put in. When you accept this, you free yourself from fear, from anxiety, from the mental prison of expectations. But most people do the opposite. They obsess over whether they will succeed or fail, instead of focusing on the work itself. They dream about the final result, but they struggle to stay consistent with the daily actions required to get there. And so, they remain stuck, paralyzed by the pressure of expectations instead of fueled by the joy of the process. This is why most New Year's resolutions fail. People say they want to get fit, start a business, learn a skill, but instead of focusing on the small daily actions, they focus on the big, overwhelming result. They step on the scale every morning expecting drastic changes. They compare themselves to experts who have been practicing for decades. They let frustration take over when progress feels slow, and then they quit. Because their goal was never about loving the process, it was about achieving a quick win. But here's the truth. Long-term success is built on consistency, not intensity. The most successful people in the world did not get there by focusing on the end goal. They got there by falling in love with the daily grind, the unseen hours, the boring repetition, the quiet discipline. Think about a writer. If they only focus on publishing a best-selling book, they will struggle through every sentence, second-guess every page, and procrastinate because the pressure feels unbearable. But if they focus on writing just 500 words a day, without worrying about the end result, they will eventually have a book. Think about an athlete. If they obsess over winning a championship, they might crumble under the weight of expectations. But if they focus on showing up, training hard, and refining their skills every day, the championship will take care of itself. Now think about your own life. Are you letting the pressure of results keep you from enjoying the process? Are you so obsessed with the outcome that you have forgotten why you started in the first place? This is your moment of truth. If you are chasing a goal, take a step back. Write down that goal. Then, write down 3 small actions you can take every single day to move closer to it. Instead of measuring success by the end result, start measuring your progress by how consistently you show up. Because success is not about winning, it is about building habits that make winning inevitable. 7. You feel calm in the face of what you cannot control. There was a time when every unexpected problem would shake you, when an unfair situation, a sudden loss, or a painful betrayal could send you spiraling. You would stress over things outside your control, obsess over what should have happened, and let external chaos dictate your internal state. But something has changed. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are no longer spending energy trying to control what is uncontrollable. Instead, you feel something unfamiliar, calm. This is not indifference. This is not carelessness. This is wisdom. Few people have embodied this more powerfully than Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned for 27 years for fighting against an unjust system. 27 years stolen from his life. Most would have emerged filled with bitterness, anger, and a need for revenge. But Mandela emerged with clarity, resilience, and an unshakable peace. He once said, "I never lose. I either win or learn." During those years in prison, he could not control what was happening to him. He could not control the political system that oppressed him, but he could control his mind. He could decide whether his suffering would break him or shape him. He chose the latter. This is what the Stoics understood centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, Book 5, Section 1, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength is not the ability to force the world to bend to your will. Strength is the ability to remain unshaken when the world refuses to cooperate. But most people do the opposite. They waste energy, time, and peace of mind trying to control what was never theirs to control in the first place. They stress over traffic as if their frustration will clear the road. They worry about what others think as if their anxiety will change someone's opinion. They get angry at unexpected setbacks, believing that their outrage will undo the past. And all of it is wasted effort. Because here's the truth. You do not suffer because of what happens to you. You suffer because of the meaning you attach to it. Imagine 2 people stuck in an airport due to a delayed flight. One person is furious, pacing back and forth, complaining about how unfair this is, calling the airline, yelling at staff, wasting energy on something beyond their control. The other person, facing the exact same delay, calmly opens a book, listens to music, or simply accepts the situation as it is. Same event. 2 completely different experiences. The first person lets the situation control them. The second person controls themselves. The same applies to life. You will face setbacks. You will encounter obstacles. You will lose things, people, and opportunities. You cannot control these events, but you can control your response to them. This is why the most powerful people in history were not those who controlled everything, but those who mastered themselves. Think about the last time you lost sleep over something outside your control. Was it worth it? Did worrying about the situation make it better, or did it only exhaust you, leaving you more drained and frustrated? This is your moment of truth. Write down 5 things you are currently worried about. Then go through the list. Circle what you can control. Cross out what you cannot. If it is something you can influence, take action. If it is something outside your control, let it go. Practice negative visualization. Imagine your worst fear. See it, accept it, and you'll take away its power. True freedom does not come from controlling everything around you. It comes from realizing you do not need to. 8. You feel an undeniable call to do something greater. There are moments in life when something deep inside you stirs. It is not a fleeting idea or a passing thought. It is a persistent, unshakable feeling that you are meant to do something more. At first, you may try to ignore it. You tell yourself that it's impractical, that it's unrealistic, that now is not the right time. But the feeling does not go away. It lingers. It grows stronger. And then, one day, you realize you can no longer suppress it. This is not just an idea. This is a calling. Martin Luther King Jr. knew this feeling well. Before he became the leader of the civil rights movement, he was just a young preacher, unsure of whether he had the strength to take on such a massive responsibility. But then, one night in 1956, after receiving yet another death threat, he sat alone in his kitchen, overwhelmed with doubt. He prayed for guidance, for clarity, and then, as he later recalled, he heard something, a voice from within telling him to stand firm, to keep going, to fight for justice no matter the cost. From that moment forward, he never hesitated again. That inner voice changed the course of history. The Stoics understood this kind of calling too. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, Book 3, Section 4, wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have work to do as a human being. Why am I still lying here? Because at some point, you will have to ask yourself, are you going to ignore this feeling forever? Or are you going to listen?" Most people never act on their calling. They let doubt, fear, and excuses get in the way. They convince themselves that their dreams are too big, that they are not ready, that someone else will do it instead. And so they wait. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait for certainty. They wait for permission. But here is the truth. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. If Martin Luther King Jr. had waited, history would be different. If Steve Jobs had waited, there would be no Apple. If Elon Musk had waited, the space industry would not have been revolutionized. And if you wait, you may never know what you were truly capable of. Because here's what no one tells you. The calling does not go away, but your ability to answer it does. If you ignore it long enough, it fades. Not because it was never real, but because you allowed doubt to suffocate it. And one day, you will wake up and realize that the life you are living is not the one you were meant for. It is just the one you settled for. But it is not too late. Right now, you have a choice. You can continue waiting, or you can act. Not next year, not next month. Now this is your moment of truth. What is the thing that has been calling you? Maybe it is a project, a career change, a mission you know you were meant to pursue. Maybe it is a message you need to share, a business you need to start, a leap you need to take. You already know what it is. The only question is, will you answer? Do something in the next 24 hours that your old self would never have dared to do. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. Say yes to the opportunity you've been avoiding. Reach out to the person who inspires you. Take the first step, no matter how small. Because when you finally say yes to your calling, your real life begins. If you feel a deep urge to do something, don't ignore it. If you can't sleep because an idea is burning inside you, don't ignore it. If it feels like the universe is pulling you towards something new, don't ignore it. This is not a coincidence. This is a sign that your life is shifting, that you are being called to something greater, and what you do next will determine whether you rise to meet that calling or let it pass you by. The great Stoic philosophers understood that transformation is not something that happens to you. It is something you must actively create. Change is uncomfortable, but that discomfort is not your enemy. It is your proof that you are evolving. Seneca once wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Growth is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong journey. So here is your final challenge. Within the next 24 hours, do something that moves you forward. Take a step, any step, toward the life that is calling you. Then come back to this video and comment, "I took action." Because when you declare it, you make it real. And if this video spoke to you, if it made you rethink your path, like, share, and subscribe to be part of this journey. Let's build a community of people who refuse to stay the same, who push themselves, who dare to answer their calling. So now, I leave you with just one question, a question only you can answer. How will you live today?